This is ESBR Boxing, and I'm delighted to be joined by Greg for a betting tip show specific for the Joe Cordina against Shavkat Rakhimov fight on the 22nd of April over in Cardiff. IBF title on the line. Obviously, Cordina, the title he won last year with that emphatic knockout of Kenichi Ogawa. He was stripped of that belt as he had a bit of a hand injury. Obviously, then Rakhimov did won that vacant belt against Britain's Zelfa Barrett. So yeah, plenty riding on this fight, undefeated against undefeated, and Greg's joining me here to discuss some of the betting prices and markets that have jumped out at us. First and foremost, Greg, how are you? And are you looking forward to this fight?
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Yeah, really looking forward to this fight. It's an old-fashioned 50-50. A man that never lost his title in the ring, taking on a man who won it from someone else. So these fights can never fail to live up to expectations. So yes, I'm good, mate. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I think Joe Cordina probably hasn't had as many fights or as is as big a name as some people think he might have been, but definitely one of the standouts from since turning over from the Olympics. He's had a brilliant career, hasn't really put a foot wrong. A lot of people were writing him off against Ogawa, in that fight, thought it was maybe a step too far, but he proved them all wrong with an absolutely emphatic knockout, which we weren't really expecting. Going into this fight, Greg, there's quite a lot of different markets you and I have been looking at, and we were discussing a little bit off camera. First and foremost, if I was to say to you to pick one bet that kind of jumped out at you straight away, what would that be?
I'll be honest, we've had shows, Paul, where I slightly favour Cordina, but I'm not confident in it at all. I think it's a 50-50 fight. Cordina's never fought anyone at that level. Maybe I'm being harsh. He stopped Tagawa, but that was very early in that fight, and it didn't tell us an awful lot. If a guy can knock someone out in 2 rounds in every fight, then fair enough. But I'll be honest, Paul, the bet that's jumped out at me the most is for Rakhimov to win in rounds 7-12 or points. Is currently 11-4. And I think the bookies have really overpriced Joe Cordina in this fight. I think they've got him to win at like 1-3. I think this is a hard fight that I can't call. So yeah, that's the one that really jumps out at me. 11-4 on Rakhimov to win in rounds 7-12 or points.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Definitely a really good price there. And if you look at Rakimov's last fight against Zelfa Barrett, that bet that you've just selected would have come in. Obviously, a bit of adversity early on in the fight, getting dropped himself by Zelfa Barrett, but he fought back and ended up winning the fight by a ninth round knockout, I think it was. So yeah, interesting. Definitely, all the value here is definitely with Rakhimov. So I understand where you're coming from. For me, the one that kind of appealed to me, again, not great odds, as you said, Cordina is probably slightly too short in the betting here. But although I can't get the Ogawa knockout out of my head, apart from that, I don't think Joe Cordina is seen as a huge puncher. He's got roughly half of his fights have been by stoppage, but that was against a lot lower level of opposition.
Yeah.
I don't think Joe Cordina. I don't think Joe Cordina will win this fight by knockout, but I can definitely see him winning it by decision. Price wise, not great. It's 11-10 just for him to win by decision, but closer to the fight, they'll obviously release markets on unanimous decision or whatever, and I imagine that would be
Yeah.
slightly better odds, maybe even closer to 2-1. So yeah, I'm going to go with Cordina decision, but he just needs to stay away from Rakimov's backhand.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. It's one of them fights where I just don't know how Cordina's going to stay away from him. I think that Rakhimov comes forward, he looks for a fight, he's extremely fit, and Cordina's going in to be absolutely peak fitness to stay away from Rakhimov all night. But it's definitely a good bet, Paul. And like you say, a lot of people might be overrating Cordina's power with the Agaba stoppage. So I think 11-10 on him to winning points is a really good bet.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's definitely one that jumped out at me. I believe that although the Rakhimov one is your kind of best bet for this fight and the one that jumped out at you, do you have any others that kind of tickled your fancy that you would maybe be tempted to back?
Yeah, just to completely confuse the viewers, Paul, I'm going to go completely in the opposite direction, but we're looking for value. This is what this show is all about. Um, I totally get where you're coming from, thinking it's going to go the distance, but I just think it's one of these ones. It's going to be a fight. I just don't see how Cordina can keep him off. And the only other bet that really jumped out at me is I say it's going in the complete opposite direction. Sky have a special on at the moment where they have 9-4 on Cordina to stop Rakhimov at any time in the fight. And I think if he can land, you said that he was down against Silva Barrett early. I think Joe Cordina does hit harder than Silva Barrett. If he hits him early and catches him cold, which is worth pointing out, I spoke to you off camera and said some of the odds are crazy. Cordina in rounds 1 to 3 is 25 to 1. He obviously stopped Ogawa inside 3 the last time. It's unlikely in this fight, Paul, but I just think at 9 to 4 for Cordina to manage to hurt and stop Rakhimov might be a bit too tempting not to put a little flurry on that as well.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm going to throw a wee curveball your way now. Just I'll put you on the spot here, Greg. So you've mentioned there your two kind of betting tips. You're favouring the Rakhimov one more so than the Cordina stoppage. If you obviously said Rakhimov stoppage 7 to 12 or on points, let's say it is a stoppage, Rakhimov wins by. If you had to select an individual round, which one would you select?
Really good question. For whatever reason, round 9 jumps out at me.
Well, Shavkat Rakhimov to win in round 9 is 28 to 1. If you're into your individual round betting, 28 to 1 for Rakhimov in round 9. And similarly, same question, but for Cordina, if he does say land a big shot, do you think it'll be first half of the fight?
Yeah. I think that his best bet is the second half of the fight goes on, Paul. Rakhimov is going to drag him into a fight. It's got to zap Cordina's energy at some point, and I think you probably carry most of your power early in the fight, and if you catch someone when they don't expect it. So, yeah, I think if Cordina is going to get to him, I think it'll be the first half of the fight.
What about one specific round?
5.
Joe Cordina, round 5, funny enough, is 28 to 1 as well. So there you go. But even just looking quickly, right, if you said the first 3 there, if you're betting on individually in round 3, it's 50 to 1 for Cordina. Round 1's 100 to 1.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely money to be made there on round betting, and I think there's a lot of there's definitely some good value there in backing either fighter to win the fight by a stoppage. Greg,
Yeah.
unless there's anything more that you want to add, I think we've covered that well. There's some good bets there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just think it'll be a really good fight. I just think some of the odds are crazy, Paul, for a guy who's got a showreel knockout of the year. For the odds to be that big early on in the fight, and Rakhimov carries a bit of power and he's very bullyish himself, I think the bookmakers could be in for a tough one that night if some people really get their thinking caps on.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Well, thanks very much for joining me. Obviously, we'll have got a big fight breakdown for this Cordina Rakhimov fight on our YouTube channel as well. Lots of other content coming your way. As always, interviews with fighters, betting shows, big fight breakdowns, written previews as well. Just Greg's prediction videos, everything else on the channel. But yes, thanks Greg for joining me, and hope to see you soon and good luck.
Thanks very much for having me, Paul.